He played his thighs.
When he plays his thighs, he really likes the song.
He does. You do play your thighs.
I believe this is the Chainsmokers.
Right, that's good. That's why he's playing his thighs.
Y'all, aren't y'all excited? Thanksgiving's around the corner. That means turkey and your cookbook and all the good food and being around family and all the kids.
Right. His tradition of his cookbook goes back 3 months.
This is the first year.
We have been writing that cookbook for 32 years,
Right.
Yeah, you
Mr.
have.
Kilmeade.
But this is the first year we all get to enjoy it.
That's right. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. A busy Tuesday, and we're going to start with some breaking news out of the West Coast. A judge out in San Francisco last
Districts and across the country want to see real change in Washington. We promised to change the status quo, and we intend to deliver on that promise.
But they're all over the place. I mean, they have some that got elected by pretending to be Republicans/moderates, others who went way to the left, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's protesting against Nancy Pelosi 1 minute. The next minute, she was releasing a brand new green agenda. Nancy Pelosi, to her credit, says easy on the impeachment thing. If there's something that comes out in the Mueller probe that maybe warrants it, okay. But right now, that's not a good move for us, and that's taking off a lot of those people who got elected by being to the left of Nancy Pelosi.
Well, there is a woman who is a congresswoman from Ohio, a Democrat, Marcia Fudge. She is publicly opposed. Pelosi is mulling a run against her. She's going to think about it through the holiday weekend. Also, there's a Democrat from Colorado by the name of Diana DeGette. She withdrew her challenge to be the number 3 top Democrat, currently held by James Clyburn. It's unclear exactly why she did that, but nonetheless, there is such a fight going on at the top of the Democratic Party in the House. And Brian, you mentioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When you watch the news coverage from Washington, D.C., she seems to be in about every third story because she is very popular.
Darling.
And this is her observation about the Democrats who are opposing Nancy Pelosi publicly.
I think that what it does is that it creates a window where we could potentially get more conservative leadership. And when you actually look at the signatories, it is not necessarily reflective of the diversity of the party. We have about 16 signatories. 14 of them are male. There are very few people of color in the caucus. There's very few ideological diversity. Yeah. It's not like there are progressives that are signing on. It's not like you have a broad-based coalition. I'm not totally bought into the concept.
Well, she's brand new to how Washington works. Nancy Pelosi has been there for a very long time. The Washington Post did a poll, who should be the next Speaker of the House? And Nancy Pelosi finished on top, but only with a plurality, 49%. Another Democrat finished with 40, and then 10% said, I don't know.
They also asked Republicans, and 76% said that they would like to see someone other than Nancy Pelosi, and 58% of independents agreed.
Well, Donald Trump made it very clear. He would like to see Nancy Pelosi back in the job, said she's done a really good job. You've got to wonder whether or not simply having her as a target for Republicans is his motivation. But nonetheless, don't be surprised if it gets really close. Some Republicans vote for her to be Speaker just to put her in that job.
Right. We asked Steve Scalise that, and he was basically laughed. Would Republicans vote for him? But the president really believes he can deliver Republicans if need be. And keep in mind this is a problem that Democrats have endemic in their system. They don't rotate out their leadership. Therefore, there's no incentive for their leadership to move on because they know the longer I stay, the more power I get.
Right.
So that's why Elijah Cummings is doing oversight. There's no mystery with who's going to be chairman of these committees. And there's no mystery that why Nancy Pelosi wouldn't want to, at 80 years old, to be Speaker of the House. With Republicans, and it leaves them vulnerable in these elections, they rotate them. So, therefore, you can say there's new leadership. Boehner's gone. Ryan's in. Ryan's gone. McCarthy's in.
Right.
It gives people a fresh shot.
They're trying to figure out who the new chairman of, rather, the ranking minority leaders who will be on the various committees right now. But I bet you, come the first week of January, Nancy Pelosi will be the next Speaker of the House.
I agree with you.
We'll see.
Let us know what you think. Do you think she should be?
All right. Meanwhile, Jillian's got some headlines.
That's right. Good morning to you. Let's start with this Fox News alert. And 3 people are dead, including a police officer and a doctor, after a gunman opens fire at a hospital. Hundreds of police cars lining the streets of Chicago to honor fallen officer Samuel Jimenez.
They did what the heroic officers always do. They ran towards that gunfire because that's what we do.
Officer Jimenez was with the department for 18 months and leaves behind a wife and 3 kids. Police say the violence started when suspect Juan Lopez killed his
votes. His opponent, though, Stacey Abrams, conceding the race, but not exactly accepting the results.
It was not a free and fair election. We had thousands of Georgians who were purged from the rolls wrongly. It was not fair to the thousands that were put on hold with their registrations. Brian Kemp oversaw for 8 years the systematic and systemic dismantling of our democracy, and that means there could not be free and fair elections in Georgia this year.
What an accusation. Here to react in his first national TV interview since winning the governor's race is Governor-elect, soon-to-be former Secretary of State for Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, you won by 55,000 votes, but clearly Stacey Abrams is not accepting it. Basically, it seems like she's saying you cheated by canceling 1.4 million people off voter rolls since 2011. What's your reaction?
Well, you know, look, Brian, I'm moving on. I'm the governor-elect. The election's been certified. This is indeed over, and I'm looking forward to serving hard-working Georgians, and that includes all of them, by the way. But look, it's unfair for her to blame, especially local elections officials that are following the law when it comes to these things for registration, how things are conducted on Election Day. In Georgia, we have secure, accessible, fair elections. We make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And we saw the easy to vote part. We had 1.4 million more voters in this election than we did in the last governor's race, a historic turnout. We have 1 million more people on the rolls because I pushed for and implemented online voter registration where people could register to vote 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If my opponent and her activist groups had used the online system, they wouldn't have had as many problems as they did with folks that they were registering. And by the way, the pending list, my daughter was one of those folks on the pending list because she was 17 and a half when she registered, and you have to be 18 to be on the list. So the day she turned 18, she came off pending, went on the voter rolls, and she voted for me on November the 6th. So the process worked down here. We're proud of that. You know, nobody's questioning the Democrats' wins, knocking off one of our congresswomen in the state of Georgia. They're not questioning the local races that they won. So this is really just political rhetoric, but that's in the past. I'm moving forward and looking forward to governing our great state.
She says that you set up less polling locations, especially in urban areas.
Well, that's just a mistruth. The county elections officials, the local elections boards have the sole responsibility for how many polling locations they have and where they are. That has been the rule of law and the way it works in Georgia under Republican and Democrat secretaries of state. So that's just not true. And by the way, the one county that this was an issue with before the election, they are controlled by Democrats. You know, so she's blaming me for a problem that they created. It's just ridiculous. And people didn't buy it in this election, which is why I got the most votes ever in a Georgia governor's race.
She also says this exact match law didn't work on to her behalf. What is the exact match law?
Well, look, we have laws on the books in Georgia, and I know she may not like some of the laws, but we take an oath of office, and the county elections officials have a duty to follow the law and the elections rules that we have in our state, and we check citizenship. We require people to show a photo ID when they go vote, and we verify this information before people go on the voter rolls. But, you know, if people had simply used the online system where you just put your driver's license information in, they could get registered to vote. But 75% of the people on this list, Brian, could not fill out the last 4 of their social. Governor, she's blaming me and local elections officials for that. It's ridiculous.
Right, and she is, to her credit, pushing back on Hollywood, who wants to boycott your state because they think this whole election was on the up and up. So give Stacey Abrams credit for that. Congratulations
Absolutely.
to you, Governor. You won by 55,000 votes and the biggest turnout, one of the biggest turnouts ever. Thanks so much. More Fox and Friends in just a moment. Governor Brian Kemp.
If there's one thing all Americans agree,
our great country and our city. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Tell us what happened. Why did the board vote? They voted 21-12 against just co-naming the street after your son.
There was a couple of different reasons. I just don't get the silly ones to me were the confusing taxi cab drivers and too many signs on a pole.
But they do it for celebrities. A lot of these streets are co-named.
But the one that really bothered me the most was always one in the crowd is the anti-war activist guy that stood up and said his piece, you know, and you really can't go back at them. But I just couldn't, you know, as a soldier, I was in the Army myself, but a soldier doesn't have a choice. He goes where the president tells him to go. You know, when this guy was saying I was against the war and all that, you really want to say something.
It's not Jimmy's fault, right?
Right. You know, he's just doing what he's told to do. But I just don't get it. Plain and simple. You get that? He goes, we thought he got it from you. And now I can't talk on the phone because I always told Jimmy, when you lead men, you lead from the front. And his men followed him anywhere. I wish I could have all those guys here today and tell what type of man he is today. I don't know how, there's 3 kids named after Jimmy today. I have a friend of mine that has these coins I want to give to you and Brian and Steve.
You're so sweet.
These are the 3, it's an NYPD one made up by a friend of ours, Detective Sammy Ha. It's got Lem, Taylor, and Jimmy on it. But it just shows the character, like Michelle said before, we have people come up to me years later and say, what a guy Jimmy was and how he led me. And there's one guy is a physician assistant now because of Jimmy, because he instilled that, and he took care of his men, and that's the big thing here for me as a father. As a young kid come up to see, man, your son took care of me. You know, how much more can you be proud of your son?
That's wonderful. Every time we see NYPD officers, we always here at Fox say thank you to their faces. Many of us who are parents, we make our kids go up and say thank you because we do appreciate the sacrifices. And we know that I can't imagine what it's like for you, especially during the holiday season. But God bless you. Thank you for being here. We did reach out to the community board. They didn't get back to us. But there is a petition that people can sign.
Yes, it's up to 6,000 now.
Okay, what's the goal?
As many as we can get.
Now, if you get so many signatures, can you change the board's decision?
We did that already. Okay. You know, they needed a minimum requirement, and we met that, and we went to the board, and you saw 21-12.
Like their rules, they have rules in how to do this, and the District 2 cops followed those rules. My question is, if we followed the rules and did what was required and you're only going to vote it down, then why do you even have something in place?
Right. Why do you even have the rules? All right. If you want to sign the petition at home, and I know many of our viewers will want to do that, you can go to foxandfriends.com. And this is in honor of Staff Sergeant Jimmy McNaughton. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, guys.
Still ahead, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Mark Stein are going to join us live. Stay with us.
Receiving the official Christmas tree delivered by horse-drawn carriage. Every vehicle was out of gas.
The nearly 20-foot-tall Fraser fir, hand-picked from a farm in North Carolina. Over the next week or two, it's going to be decorated and then displayed ultimately in the Blue Room of the White House.
That's right. The guy who owns that farm down in North Carolina, he tried 5 times. You have to compete at the local level, and then if you're selected by your state, then you can go on. This is huge. The association that picks the Christmas tree, they really take it seriously, and that tree was gorgeous.
But how do they benefit from having their tree selected?
Because we're talking about them right now.
Yeah. They have a Fraser fir tree farm down in North Carolina, and they can say, we provided the tree for the president, and then that draws a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
North Carolina's provided the most trees in the Blue Room than any other state.
That's fantastic. And the first president to put a Christmas tree in the White House?
Was it?
It's either Benjamin Harrison or Franklin Pierce. There's some debate about who put it first. Nonetheless, it's a happy tradition.
I know. Oh, gosh, I'm losing his name. Who'd you write the book about?
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson was known as like a fierce guy, but he always had a fun, huge party inside the White House. And he had a snowball fight inside the White House using cotton balls.
Oh, so that is very interesting.
It's very important to Jackie.
And he didn't have any kids of his own. Meanwhile, Todd Pyro is having breakfast with friends in Quakertown at the Quakertown Family Restaurant in Quakertown, Pennsylvania.
Hey guys, good morning to all of you. No snowball fights here. Instead, we have a panel of pastors. It's going to be a little bit different than we've done some of these breakfasts with friends in the past. One big question to you guys. Many in the mainstream media say the way the president is treating the caravan is cruel. As pastors, as men who teach the word of Jesus Christ, how do you reconcile your support of the president's immigration policies with your faith?
Great to be with you, Todd. Well, it's kind of like we'd say this, that God loves everyone. God's compassionate. He wants all to go to heaven. But heaven's a perfect place. And to get into heaven, there's criteria. You have to come God's way. Enter into the straight gate. Wide is the gate that leads to destruction. straight is the great gate that leads to life. You have to choose that path to enter into God's heaven. Same thing true of our country. Certain laws have to be followed. You have to come according to the law to get in. Once you follow the law, you can come. We welcome you. We love to have you. We have compassion. God's a God of great compassion. He wants all to be saved, but you got to come through Jesus. That's the only way of salvation. So that's how I view it.
David.
Enter in through Jesus Christ.
Thank you for your thoughts. John, same question to you.
I agree with Pastor Smith regarding salvation. The only way is through Jesus Christ. But as far as getting into our country, the question, how do you reconcile, is really a flawed question. So there's really no answer. You can't answer a flawed question. And I don't think that there is any reconciling that needs to be done. Our country is the most compassionate nation on the planet. And we accept more immigrants per year and per capita than any other nation, as I understand it. And so why should that be laid at our feet? We give more money in financial aid, or we give more financial aid to these countries all over the world who need assistance. And so it shouldn't be laid at our charge. We're the most compassionate. Why are we considered the least compassionate? And so these folks are also, regarding the caravan that's down there, when it comes to them, if they're seeking asylum, our nation does accept people who are truly seeking political asylum or being persecuted in some way. These people are coming waving their country's flag. And they're coming just looking for work, which I feel bad that they need work. But the best way for them to change is not to make that treacherous journey up with families, women, and children, but to change the country where they're in. And if they would do that, they could proudly wave their flag and stay in their own in their home country. So I just don't think that there's anything to reconcile.
Pastor John, thank you. And finally, Pastor David, same question to you.
Yes, sir. I just believe that people need to follow the laws. And if they're going to come here, they need to come in the right way. You can't just come and break the rules. There's a certain way, a right way of doing things.
Right.
And I had a friend ask me that, how do you reconcile you calling yourself a Christian and not wanting to receive people? And we do want to receive people, but we want to receive them in the right way. So I believe they have to follow the laws.
Pastor David, thank you very much. Send on back to New York City. Pretty interesting, right, guys?
Yeah, indeed it is. All right, Todd Pyro with the pastor panel in Pennsylvania. All right.
Thank you.
Good enough. All right, 22 minutes now before the top of the hour, and Jillian joins us with a story about the guy behind one of the biggest countdown shows in radio.
Yeah. Okay, so let's tell you what's going on here. The family of legendary DJ Casey Kasem accusing each other of killing him.
I love that man so much. I would have died for him.
Jean killed my father. What she did led to his death.
The battle between Kasem's second wife and his grown children from a previous marriage laid out in this week's 48 hours. Kasem died from a Parkinson's-like disease in 2014. Police are opening a new investigation into his death. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is feeling a new socialistic impulse. He thinks the government should control every plot of land and buildings in his city. Speaking with New York Magazine, de Blasio says, in part, quote, I think people all over the city of every background would like to have the city government be able to determine which building goes where, how high it will be, who gets to live in it, what the rent will be. So right now, people are lining up to buy pot in Massachusetts. Recreational marijuana will go on sale there in just a few minutes. It comes more than 2 years after the state voted to legalize recreational use. A local mayor and a disabled Iraq War veteran will make the first 2 purchases. Massachusetts is the 7th state to permit retail marijuana shops. And look at this. 3 little girls think they're just going to a hockey game, but they wind up getting the holiday surprise of a lifetime.
Let's see who's behind us to help you figure out the puzzler tonight. Fans, please welcome home American hero Sergeant Daniel Lehman. He spent the last year...
Sergeant Lehman of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard surprising his daughters at a Pittsburgh Penguins game. He spent the last 11 months in Kuwait, and he did grow up a diehard Penguins fan, and he passed that on to his wife and his girls. Penguins lost, but in that situation, it's like, who cares?
They won. They won right there.
I love the way, as the crowd realized who he was, they all stood up and gave him a stand.
And all the girls had their big bows on. He kisses his wife.
That's great. All right. Thank you very much.
Home.
Yeah. Where's Janice Dean?
She's outside with the folks.
Look at this amazing crowd that we've got out here today. Wow. Oh my gosh, where are you guys from? What are your your names?
We're from Tennessee. My name is Lisa.
And what group are you from?
We're with the American Festival Choir. We sang at Carnegie Hall on Saturday night.
Are you going to give us a little taste?
Just a little taste.
Do it. And while we do that, look at the amazing folks that came to see us on Fox and Friends. Okay, give us your best singing voice right now.
Mary had a baby and she laid him in a manger. Good news, the Savior is born this day.
Next.
Like the angel said, she named the baby Jesus. He came to free us and to make a way.
Oh my gosh, fantastic. Let's take a look at the maps real quick. I have two storm systems I just want to talk about, the Northeast and the West Coast. If you are traveling today, you want to call ahead. So there's colder air coming down. We have the potential for snow showers across the Northeast as well as the West Coast. Central U.S. looks great. Thank you all for coming today. Oh my gosh. Hi, Mom from Starkville, Mississippi. This is fantastic. The crowds are getting bigger. Fox and Friends fans are here.
They love you, Janice.
They do, and we love them.
And we're going to hear more from the group in just a minute. But in the meantime, Democrats are making a big push for Beto O'Rourke in 2020. Would that be a big mistake? Our next guest says not necessarily.
And more mega morning deals for you. Pearls for 90% off, scarves for 80% off, watches for 90% off. They're practically giving them all away.
If the music is groovy, it makes you feel happy like an old-time.
The most dramatic races of the 2018 midterms finally wrapping up, with Brian Kemp winning the state of Georgia as governor and Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis claiming victory in Florida. But with all their Democratic opponents challenging the races right until the bitter end, what lessons can both parties learn from the midterms as we head to the next election in 2020? Here to discuss, we got the co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics.com, Tom Bevan, joining us, as you can see, from Chicago. Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so while some people might debate whether or not there was a blue wave or whether it was a big wave or a little wave or barely a wave, there are certain things we are learning about where America's mind is when it comes to going to the polls, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple of lessons for Democrats with these two races in particular. I mean, Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum were charismatic candidates. They were good candidates, but in the end, they were too far to the left for the population of the states that they were trying to represent. They were far left on a bunch of issues. Stacey Abrams wanted to ban AR-15s in the state of Georgia. Not a good position to take. Andrew Gillum wanted Medicare for all, abolish ICE. I mean, he was really sort of far left. And I think that, more than anything, doomed those candidacies. And so as Democrats look toward 2020, they need to take that into consideration, particularly as we look at the upper Midwest, which is where the 2020 battle is going to be won or lost.
When you look at Donald Trump's favorability going into 2020 as well, you got to figure, when you look at the midterms, he needs to do better with independents and he's got to do better with women, right?
Exactly. The gender gap was huge this year. Women went for Democrats by 19 points on November 6th. That's something that Republicans have to figure out how to stop the slide among women, and particularly in suburban women. And then independents. Donald Trump won them in 2016. They went for Democrats this year by 12 points. So that's another, and it was 30% of the electorate. So a big chunk of the electorate that Republicans have to win back if they're going to have, and if Donald Trump is going to have a chance at winning re-election.
Sure. And one of the things that the Democrats were very effective at was running on health care. They didn't have a plan. They just said the Republicans are going to take it from you. That's going to be very potent going forward.
Very potent. And I think both parties, Democrats are going to go in and try and make some moves on health care. We'll see whether they can actually legislate anything or not. But Republicans they have to handle this. It was the #1 issue by far. We sort of knew that going in. But Republicans were playing on defense, and they have to turn around and I think have an answer for that. The economy turned out to be the tied for #2, #3 issue. And even among the people who thought the economy was going well, 40% of those people voted for the Democrats. So it was not the economy, stupid, this year.
Meanwhile, down in Texas, Ted Cruz beat Beto O'Rourke by over 2 points. And yet, when you look toward 2020, some people are talking about maybe he should be, the guy who lost should either be running as president or might be considered a vice presidential pick.
Yeah, typically losing a Senate election is not a launching pad to the presidency, but Beto generated a lot of enthusiasm and raised a lot of money, and that puts him in the conversation in a wide-open race.
And times have changed. This is, politics are not like